Welcome to episode 67 of Eat, Drink, Write, and Urban Fantasy Whiteboard. We are going to talk about chapter endings.
Yes.
First, how was your week?
Still busy. I think I had like 2 meetings with my main professor, and both of them were extremely overwhelming. So I have a ton of science that I had to do and everything. But it has ended very well because we are now vacationing in Helen together. We've both had at least 1 shot of our COVID vaccine, so felt a little bit better about meeting up, and we've all been pretty careful.
Yeah.
And everything. So I'm pretty thrilled about that. That makes the week very good.
So we're up in the mountains and we're staying in a house so that we got some of the kids here. We got Taylor and Sydney are here, and then Jordan and Darius are here. Courtney and Montana are not, but Riley is here too, and then Mike is with me.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're having a fun. My week was busy as well, trying to get ready for this. And then Nana, of course, fell and broke her tailbone.
Right.
So I'll be going up to Virginia to help her out. She's just in a lot of pain. She's healing, but in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
So next week I'll be up there, which will be exciting times trying to get prepared for the chaos court. That'll be the following week. But I can do almost all of that online, so that should be good. But I'm enjoying this weekend, trying not to think about any of those things.
Absolutely.
And drinking and eating and all of that.
Yes. So. Plenty of drinking and eating.
Earlier we went and ate at a restaurant and had, what was your drink?
Oh, it was just like an Angry Orchard, so just like a apple cider.
An apple cider, and I had
a jalapeno.
Oh yeah, a jalapeno margarita. Oh my goodness, it was so good. And then they put us outside because COVID and whatnot, and it's rainy and cold here, so I had a coffee drink, a coffee Jack.
Yeah.
Cowboy Jack.
Right, the one that you've been talking about for a couple of weeks now.
And so I actually had it today, and
nice.
I took a picture of her orchard and my, I think margarita.
Yeah, I think it was.
I'll post that. And we ate some fabulous food. I had some salmon.
I had a bison chili bowl. It was really good.
And we got to taste each other's food, which was fun. And so that, we're enjoying ourselves.
Yeah,
so it's a good week, and we're on location to do our podcast, and that's fun too. We'd love to do it outside, but it's pouring down rain. So
yeah, I'm still thrilled that we get to do it in person, though. I've missed doing podcasting in person.
Me too. So. I have jokes.
Oh yes, all right.
Okay, so I love Harry Potter, but after rereading the chapter "The Death Day Party," I realized something about Nearly Headless Nick.
Okay.
He was a very poorly executed character.
Because it didn't cut all the way through.
Yes.
Nearly headless.
Nearly head. I mean, that was a good joke.
That was a good
play on joke. I mean, play on words. I'm from far in the future, the year 2104. I've come to ask you a question. Why does the history textbook have a separate chapter for every month of 2020?
Right. I mean, to be fair,
right?
Let's be real.
Well, let me tell you.
2020 was something else.
Yeah, it was. Whew. And then the last one, 2 biologists are discussing a new book on amphibians. Biologist 1, what did you think of the chapter on frogs? Biologist 2, oh, it was quite riveting.
Bless. Gotta love the frog stuff.
Yes.
All right.
So chapter endings. We've kind of talked a little bit about it before, but we haven't done an episode on it.
Right. I think there was one episode recently where we mentioned them and we were like, oh, you know what? We should do an episode on that. And it's like, that's what I think got us going. I don't remember though, for sure.
I don't either.
Maybe somebody who listens to us does.
Maybe so. So, different chapters of different types of books are going to have different chapter endings.
Right.
So like if you're writing a action thriller, just about every one of your chapters is probably going to have some suspenseful
kind of like a cliffhanger.
But if you're writing a romantic comedy or even a historical romance, that's going to have totally different
probably endings. More like a humorous ending. Or
could be humorous or it could be emotional.
Right.
One of my favorite authors for romance, just straight romance, was Julie Garwood back in the day, and she did historical romance.
Yeah.
Her characters were very snarky. I think she probably had a lot to do with the way I developed as a writer, because
Yeah.
I read her so much. But I loved her endings. There was a lot of humor in them, but it wasn't always action packed, but there was a lot of suspense. A lot of her novels did have a mystery or something
good.
entwined in it.
Yeah.
So there were some cliffhangers, but not the same type that you're going to get
from like an action
thriller.
Yeah.
James Patterson, who is such a great author and has written so many different types of books.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever read his stuff, but I know Dad
Really?
does. Yeah.
Yeah, the stuff that Dad reads, the suspense stuff, is not my particular, we are urban fantasy.
Right.
But he did write a young adult one, and I can't remember the name of it now, which I think I've mentioned before because of the way he did the chapters. It was from a different point of view.
Oh,
It was
interesting.
this boy and his sister, and it was all about magic and witches. I think it
Right.
was called Witches or something like that.
Magic and witches or something.
But he is a brilliant author, obviously, and
Very
he
nice.
says at the end something has to propel you into the next chapter.
Yeah.
So that's what you need to be thinking of as you wind down a chapter.
Yeah.
You need to leave your reader with a sense of what to expect going forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
So why is how you end it so important? Keeps your reader reading.
Yeah. Like keep turning pages.
Yes.
You want them to continue turning that next page. And the way that I think about it is like using the end of chapters as like mini cliffhangers, which I think you're going to talk about a little bit later on. But it doesn't even have to be, like you said, an action-y cliffhanger. You can make a cliffhanger without it being, it has to be suspenseful.
Yeah. Cliffhanger has a lot of different connotations.
Yeah.
I just love those books where you're like, okay, I'm just going to read to the end of this chapter and then I'm going to go to sleep.
And then you get
to the end of the chapter and you're like, damn it.
Well, that's like, I'm reading the Alpha and Omega series right now by Patricia Briggs. And I'll just be like sitting there reading and I'll be like, okay, well, it's time to go to bed. I'll go to bed in about 20 minutes. And then like, I'll look at the clock and I'm like, oh, it's been like 4 hours. I'm like, okay, I probably should go to sleep.
Yeah.
So definitely, because I'll definitely do the thing where I'm like, I'm going to get to the end of this chapter and stop. And then I don't even realize that I just keep going. Because like, I'll get to the end of the chapter and I think my brain is just like, oh, next page.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, I have to figure out what
comes
next.
That's a goal for me.
Yeah.
To have readers have that problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're not just mean to our characters, but we're that way to our readers as well. But you try to make the end of every chapter as exciting as the opening lines of a chapter,
right,
to get them to turn that page.
Yeah. And I think we could probably do a whole episode on opening lines.
That's a great idea.
Because like we're doing like the ending lines of chapters. I think we could definitely do opening lines for
what
chapters.
Wine are you drinking?
It's a blackberry wine that my girlfriend got.
Yummy. I'm drinking my usual sparkling rosé, brut rosé. So and then we're going to go eat sushi for dinner tonight. There's a restaurant here and they make the best cosmopolitans. So
and the best sushi.
They do. So we'll be taking lots of pictures. That'll be our podcast food for this week.
Absolutely.
Okay, I lost my train of thought. Okay, so how do you know when to end a chapter? And my best advice that I ever give on recipes and everything else is when it feels right.
Yeah, which I think I told you guys about recently, is that's her answer to everything when you ask her how to do something.
You just kind of know.
Yeah.
But really though, you think about, is it a location change? Is it a time change? Is there a point of view change?
Right.
Consider the length. If you've got a chapter that's just going on and on and on and on and on, you've got to give your reader a break.
Yeah.
So you may want to rethink, where is a better place to end? Yeah, where can I end this?
Right, which like leads me to the question of like, did your chapter, cover everything that you wanted it to? Is it a good place to end a chapter? Like you can't just cut one in half and like, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, wait, like, does it make sense to end it there? Did you resolve the questions that you had for the chapter, and can you use the last sentence as a question to lead into the next chapter, which I think you talked about a little later.
Question, that's a good word.
Yeah.
So types of chapter endings, and there's a ton of them out there. I did a lot of research on this one, and there was some articles, there's 2 ways, and there's one that said there's 12 ways, and I'm like, okay, so there's lots of ways to do it. The one that everybody knows is the cliffhanger.
The cliffhanger, which we've talked about a little bit.
And so what I have done for this episode is I went through Dragon Watchers, which is one of my novels that is out there. I've submitted it, but right now I think I've been rejected. It's not out there actively right now, which I need to send it back out.
Yeah.
But I used that novel and I went and looked at all the endings about all my chapters and put in examples to talk about so that people will know exactly what I'm talking about. So for the cliffhanger, I had one where it leads on and then the last sentence is, and all hell broke loose.
Definitely a cliffhanger. I feel like, because you're like, well, what does that mean? Like, how did hell break loose? Like, I gotta know, like, what happened? What just happened there? So I would definitely like turn the next page. And
then another example is, I think this was also Dragon Watchers. I think all of my examples are from Dragon Watchers.
Gotcha.
After a few minutes of silence, stomping over ground that seemed more like stone than dirt, we left the thick forest of trees and stepped into Armageddon.
Which automatically tells your reader right there, like, oh, shit is going down.
Something is about to happen.
Something has happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so since you did that, I kind of did the same thing and went through my books and looked at chapter endings and did that. So one of mine was, for a moment, I wasn't so upset about where I had ended up. But just a moment, and that's from.
Oh, that gives me chills.
Chills.
It gives me chills.
So obviously, we know that it's like not long lasting. Your reader's going to be like, "Well, why? What is happening?" And then I pulled one from Louis and Delaney, chapter 3, and that one is, and then I left, and the pit in my stomach warned me that it was the wrong decision.
Oh.
So kind of ominous, leaves you wondering, like, oh, okay, something is going wrong. Why?
I love that.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, you can also end a chapter with a question.
Right.
So my example from Dragon Watchers is, this is a quote, "We're going to rescue Virus, and that's final. Now, what are we going to wear to the party?"
I love that. I think asking a question for the end of a chapter is a really good idea because it also lets you implant a question into your reader's head. So if you want your reader to be wondering about this thing that's going to be important later, but they don't realize it's going to be, you can automatically put an idea into their head of like, ask them about this party. Maybe there's something about this party that's going to be really interesting.
There it
Absolutely,
is.
yes.
And then another example of the ending with a question is not really a question, but it adds, like you were saying, it makes that question in your reader's mind, I think.
Yeah.
So Enya raised her eyes and looked at me. How will she do that? Good question, kiddo. That was in my character's thoughts.
Right.
And Zasper tapped his chin, one step at a time. And then in my character's head, she's thinking, well, that sounded easy enough. Too bad the first step was such a doozy.
Yeah.
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 So it's kind of humorous, kind of a question, but it definitely leaves that question in your reader's mind of going, yeah, how is she going to do this?
Yeah.
How is she going to manage to do whatever that it was in this chapter?
Right. Which I think is what I did with most of mine that ends in a question, except for Louis and Delaney. So I have two from Aiden. The first one being, a chill slowed down my spine at how similar the words were to what I had given the investigator earlier. Dead bodies don't just get up and walk away, but maybe that wasn't all true. And so that makes you wonder, like, oh, okay, so maybe it is true. And it's like there's that question lingering.
Yeah.
And then my second one was, but my thoughts around Sandy's story on my own and on the potential of what I'd stumbled into by moving to Blacksburg, Virginia. So there's like some potential there. And it's like, well, what is that potential exactly? What is Aiden going to get out of it?
That leaves that question in your reader's mind.
Yeah. Right. And then in Louis and Delaney, I did end a chapter with a question. And it's one of my favorite ones because it's a rhetorical question. So not necessarily, I think it's more, actually, I probably could have also included this down in one of your later categories, but the quote is, and that scared me almost more than he did because I also believed him to be a monster. And what did it say about me if I could feel for a monster? So that's more like character development.
I like that.
But it does end with a question. And I thought it was a really interesting way to end.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another type of chapter ending is to make it a beginning, which sounds ridiculous. That sounds like oxymoronish.
Right. Paradoxical.
That's the word.
Yes.
Like in Frickin' Fairies, if I never see another frickin' fairy again, it will be too soon. That shows something more is about to happen. That was in the very beginning. It wasn't actually the end of a chapter. It was the end of the first paragraph.
Right.
But it does begin the thought process for your reader of, where
there's a story.
Where do we go from here?
I think that's a really important point. Sorry to cut you off.
That's okay.
But I think your ending sentences should absolutely lead into what is going to come next. And I think that's probably the main goal of any ending sentence. Like, you don't want it to just end and leave nothing.
And you can close the book and go to bed now.
Right.
No, you don't want them to be able to do that.
Right.
Yeah. In the Dragon Watchers, the keepers have her, but she's sick, and we need you to save her. So that's the end of chapter 4, the last sentence, and it is a beginning, because that is the beginning of that particular plot line. She's got to save this, whoever the keepers have. So, and then another one that is a beginning at the end is both of you get changed. We must move quickly. And so that's the end of chapter 6 of Dragon Watchers. So we know things are about to happen. Yeah, something is, we're moving on. That's the beginning of the next scene, or the next, something more is coming.
Right. And I think that's actually a really good way to also think about your pacing. You can use your the end of your chapter to set the pace, because you just said, oh, we have to move quickly. So obviously what's going to happen next is, like, they're going to be moving, they're going to be in the next location.
And it creates that tension too that we talked about in our tension episode, where timing might be a way to increase that tension. So, yeah. And then, so I took another example from Aiden, and this one was, she led me into her home, and somehow that felt like a line of demarcation. Oh, see, all of yours are giving me chills.
Well, good. And so, like, that just tells us, like, well, there was a before the line, and then now there's an after.
Yeah. So,
and that was the end of chapter 1.
Yeah.
So, like, that leads
something you into definitely is coming.
The story.
Something, the scene that you set up in the beginning of her normal life is changed. That line has been drawn, and she's crossed it.
Right. So, and she knows it. So.
Yeah. Write a description at the end of a chapter. This is not flashy or anything like that, but think along the lines of the TV scenes where they fade out, the camera pulls back and fades out, and you're seeing a scene. There's no dialogue or anything, but it's a scene. So what I really thought of when I was talking about this one is the Lord of the Ring movies.
Yeah.
Think of the ending of the first 2 movies, which are definitely like cliffhanger chapters.
Right.
But I think it was movie 2 where you see the bird flying towards, they had made it, the eagles had put them down, and you see this bird flying towards the lonely mountain, and it's tap, tap, tap on the thing, and the dragon's eye pops open.
Yeah.
And no words, it's just description.
Very good. Very
excellent. Awesome. And it also is cliffhanger, obviously. Right. But that is an excellent way of showing how description doesn't have to be a boring way to end a chapter.
Right. I agree.
Yeah. And then my example out of Dragon Watchers, end of chapter 2, I think. I thought sleep would be a long time coming, but it seemed I had been through enough today so that even freezing forests, blood-red moons, and fire kings couldn't keep sleep from overtaking me. So it's summing up what she's been through in the first 2 chapters.
Right.
Already she's had those things, and yet it's also definitely setting that scene where she's going to sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a clear demarcation.
End of that
chapter.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the one I did was less focused on, like, the scene as a whole, like scene description, and more kind of a description of what my character was going through at the end of that chapter. So I took it from Louis and Delaney, and it's from Louis's point of view. And it says, and then Delaney closed her door, leaving me in a stunned silence while she walked into work. So she's watching Delaney walk away from her. And at the end of this chapter, it is a little bit of an emotional chapter. There's a little bit of character development here, but it's in this stunned silence. It's a very quiet place where she is, and she's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a perfect example of writing description.
Yeah.
Yeah. Create a mystery. From Dragon Watchers, this is another Dragon Watchers one. And it's from the thought of my main character. And she says, I was kind of reminded of the Flu Network in Harry Potter, though instead of a fireplace, this was a stone portal of some kind. Closing my eyes hard, I stepped forward.
And so it's like, well, where is she going?
Yeah, where is she going? What's going to happen? Because you got to remember, this girl is from Atlanta, Georgia.
Right.
And ended up in this totally different world that it's not even an urban fantasy where it's here.
Yeah.
With just different rules,
Right.
Beck found out about Faye.
Yeah.
But at least she was still here in her own home.
Like, it knew the city that she was in.
And, this Kata ends up in an entirely different world.
Right.
And so stepping through this, flu network, which I also like to bring in pop culture references.
Yeah, absolutely.
And because everybody knows Harry Potter. So that was that one. And then another chapter ending that creates a mystery is the ending of another chapter in Dragon Watchers, and it says, "And blackness consumed us."
Which is obviously a mystery. It's
Right.
like, well, what,
why, and
Yes.
where are they going? What's going to happen? Where'd the blackness come from?
Right.
Yeah.
And so I did something kind of similar where in the end of Louis and Delaney chapter 1, it goes, it's a piece of dialogue and then some description, and she goes, "I can't afford the emergency room," I said, "but the black spots in my vision took over my surroundings completely."
Oh.
So we know that something's wrong with her. We know that she just passed out. We don't know what's going to happen next.
Mm-hmm.
So
Interesting.
yeah.
Another way to end a chapter is to have a revelation or a surprise. So, Dragon Watchers, "Why, yes," he said, smiling at me. "Didn't you know we're witches?" That was the end of Dragon Watchers, and it was this moment where
I love
she's like,
it.
"Oh shit."
Yeah, I feel like this is a really good way to end a chapter for like incorporating a plot twist.
Mm-hmm.
Especially leading into either like the beginning of the story, so like near the inciting incident, you kind of reveal something and the reader's like, "Whoa, okay, this is really cool. I'm gonna keep reading."
Yeah.
Or when you're leading into the climax, when shit starts to get real,
Yeah.
and you're like, "Oh God, how are they gonna get out of this?"
Yeah.
I think that's a really good way to use it.
Mm-hmm.
I think though it doesn't necessarily have to be a big reveal, like it doesn't have to be a huge surprise.
That's true.
In Louis and Delaney, I have a chapter ending where Louis is trying to hide something from her boss. And at the very last sentence of that chapter is a piece of dialogue from her boss, and it lets us know and the reader know that she did not succeed. So she did not manage to hide from him. And so I thought, that was pretty cool. So I think you can reveal something very small, but have it still have an impact on your characters and on your reader.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Which kind of brings us to the next one, which is humor.
Right.
This is one of my favorites. That snarky comment, that twist of humor,
Yeah.
which I love so much. Here is another chapter ending sentence in Dragon Watchers. "Well, that certainly didn't sound good."
Yeah.
And then, you want to read, you want to turn the page. Another one, the last sentence is great.
Short, sweet, and to the point, and funny.
And then the last sentence of another one is, "Well, hell."
Well, hell. Like, well.
So those are very small sentences, but leave a big impact.
It does have impact,
on the reader.
Yeah, which like I've noticed for my own books, like I don't actually use humorous endings. I don't think like ever. I was going through them today and I was like, I don't use very short or humorous endings, but I do love to read it. Like I love to see them.
That is so interesting.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I actually pulled out, I never thought about my chapter endings until for this one, I was like, oh, well, I should put some examples. And I was reading every last sentence, and it was just fascinating to see what I did, because it's not something that I do on purpose usually.
Right.
Sometimes in Dragon Watchers, there were, I need to make this chapter, this is a big deal. And so somehow I've got to end this chapter in a certain way. But a lot of these that I've used, I didn't even realize. And I'm like, oh, that's funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
Theme.
Yes.
So you can have chapter endings that consistently end with a theme.
Yeah.
It makes me think of Karen Monning.
Yes.
She is brilliant with using theme where we didn't even
realize.
She's so subtle.
Yeah.
And then when you do realize it, you're like, holy shit, that was brilliant.
I know we talk about it a lot. There was one time that I was reading the book and you hadn't had a chance to read it yet.
Yeah.
So like I'm sitting there reading and I'm reading in the living room and I'm just like going through it. And then I realized that she had done something and I was like, oh my God. And so I got up and I went into the room that you were in and I just stared at you and I went, oh my God. And then I walked away and you were like, okay.
Yeah, because you couldn't tell me because I hadn't gotten there yet.
But then you realized it later.
I did.
And you came up to me and you're like, did you realize? And I was like, yes, that's what it was.
So yeah, this is a brilliant way to end chapters. And you don't have to be, oh gosh, my theme is,
death.
Revenge or whatever. And
yeah.
at the end of every chapter, I have to make a reference to revenge or death.
Yeah.
But it can be subtly done.
Mm-hmm.
You can have, like love or death or whatever, you can have.
But you could do like the description for the ending of your chapter and have it describing the skeletal trees. In
That's
the
what
dead
I
of
was about to
winter.
say, like
Yeah.
the leaves on the ground is also a symbol of death.
Right.
And so it could be a description ending chapter, but also have that
The
theme
theme in
running
it.
through
Yeah.
it. Also symbolism.
Absolutely.
Great way. I think Jen, one of our patrons, loved our episode on the color symbolism.
That was a mini. We need to do another one of
Yellow,
those.
yeah. And say yellow is your symbolism that you do use throughout. There are, I mean, you can do it with, that's the color shirt she had on, without
Right.
it being
Without it being
overly
obvious.
done.
Yes.
But it is something that you can tie it into the whole theme and symbolism of your story
Right.
at the end of every chapter.
Definitely. I have found that I really enjoy incorporating theme into a lot of the writing devices that I use as I'm writing. A lot of my main characters end a chapter just reflecting on what the hell happened to them in that chapter.
Mhm.
And I think that pulls in a lot of the theme of the chapter and the theme of my novel as the character is reflecting on events.
Mhm.
So
I like that. I never really thought about theme, but there is so much that you can do with it.
mhm.
And I know we've done an episode on theme, but there is such a deep topic that there is more to talk about.
Yeah.
So we may do a mini on a different aspect of theme or whatever,
Right.
or a specific theme.
Or yeah,
Yeah,
specific
like
types of things.
death.
I think those could be whole episodes.
They could be.
Yeah.
They could be.
Yeah.
Another way to end the chapter is with a promise. So like maybe next time. You know, that being the last sentence.
Mhm.
Then we know that's foreshadowing to some degree. You know, the sample I have from my first chapter in Dragon Watchers was, it couldn't get much worse.
Well, that's definitely a promise because
Yes.
you are telling the audience that it
It's
will get
gonna
much
get worse. Sorry.
Which is pretty good. I think a lot of these types of endings can be combined. You know, they're
I agree.
you know, one sentence doesn't have to be, oh, it's only about theme. Obviously,
Mhm.
it can be descriptive, it can be whatever. And I think a lot of ending sentences for chapters should be a promise
Mhm.
for what's to come.
Mhm. Yeah. And then character development. This is one you already mentioned.
It's one of my favorites.
It is a huge and a brilliant way to end chapters.
Yeah.
I have an example from Dragon Watchers, of course,
Yes.
and it's dialogue. And he says, why, yes, he says, smiling at me. Oh, I used this one already.
You did.
Didn't you know we were witches? Okay, so that is not really, I think I might have cut and pasted that from somewhere.
Something incorrect.
Because
Yeah.
that's not really character development. I mean, it kind
Other
of
than
is.
it's revealing about the dude who's saying, hey, we're witches.
Okay, the next sentence,
Yeah.
which is character development, is from the point of view of my main character. And she's thinking, and she's like, she says, love him? Yes. Trust him? No.
Which is definitely revealing about
Mhm.
the characters.
Mm-hmm.
Both her and whoever she's in love with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I have one from Louis's point of view
Mhm.
about Delaney, and it's, you know, Delaney believed in me. I wasn't going to argue. And so that's just showing their kind of their relationship development and
Mhm.
how how Louis is beginning to think about herself in terms of the way that Delaney also thinks of her.
Mm-hmm.
So
And there's a ton more ways to do it. So definitely let us know ways that you like to do it
yeah,
and what you've used, and we'll share that as well. But I've been curious, and you do this in your writing, and I've never done this because I don't really know how to do it. So
Yeah.
I want to hear from you. Sometimes when you're reading a chapter,
Yeah.
they don't end the chapter, but they do this ... or star
Yeah.
or something to indicate something. And I'm like, why would you do that instead of just making the chapter end?
right. So those are scene breaks. So those are specifically breaks between scenes, and I think we could do a whole episode on that. But the reason that I do it, first of all, if I take Louis and Delaney, for example, and I need to put Louis in a different place than where she has been. So I start this chapter, she's in her apartment, and now I need her to be way across town, and it's 5 hours later. That's going to be a scene break. It's going to be very hard to...
Why wouldn't it be a chapter break?
Because the next chapter is always going to be Delaney's point of view.
Oh, that makes sense.
Right.
That's very specific to the style of that particular book, though.
That's true. I have another reason. So when you write a chapter, it's typically covering a specific question that you want to answer. So you're going to write that entire chapter with the goal of answering that question, getting these characters where they need to be, they find new questions, whatever. If you have not answered the question, I'm not going to end that chapter.
That makes
But
sense.
I'm going to write another scene in that chapter so that I can get closer to answering
To
those
that
questions.
question. Oh,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
I understand now.
Because I do it with Aiden too. I have scene breaks in there, but
Mhm.
I'm not ready to move to the next chapter because there's more that I need to reveal within this one chapter. This chapter is about her discovering blah. And so I want her to discover blah, but if she hasn't done that yet.
So you use it when you haven't completed the whole line for that chapter
Right.
that needs to be done, but you need to change the scene.
Right, because there's
Okay.
a beginning, a middle, and an end to each chapter,
Right.
to each scene, whatever. And so I make sure that I fulfill that. And if it requires a scene break due to location change or time change or whatever, then I do that.
But you would never do it to change from Delaney's to Louis' point of view. That's a chapter.
That is a chapter, yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Well, that's all I've got.
Yeah, well, I've got an interview question.
Okay.
So it's kind of a twofer.
Okay.
Which type of character, geez, I have had almost this whole glass of wine now. Which type of chapter ending is your favorite to read and which is your favorite to write?
My favorite to write is an easier answer. It's that snarky comment.
Yeah.
I love that little snarky thing.
Yeah.
My favorite to read, I don't know. It goes back to Karen Monning. Her readings. You remember that one chapter? It was about one paragraph long.
Uh-huh.
And I can't remember the exact sentence, but it gives me goosebumps too.
Yep.
That chapter was one of my all-time favorite chapter endings.
Very good.
And the way she ended that book was also, I think, one where I'm going, oh my God, we got to wait another year for the next book to come out.
I believe so.
I think that was in that book.
Yeah.
But those are my favorite to read. But I think my favorite to write is the snarky,
humorous
Mhm.
kind of thing.
What about you?
My favorite to write is probably the reflective ones. I really enjoyed the question that I have
Mhm.
my characters ask themselves because you learn a lot about your characters with those questions. And I love ending a chapter on it because it leaves, again, the question in your reader's mind of like, oh, is Delaney also a monster because she has feelings for a monster? Which, read the book to find out. But,
Right.
But my favorite to read would probably be the shocking ones. I really enjoy surprising ones. If they manage to actually surprise me, those are the best. I think, didn't Patricia Briggs leave it on a chapter ending where Mercy got pushed into the river with a river monster?
Yes, that was the River Marked.
And I think that was one of my favorite
that was a great chapter.
favorite things in the world.
Yes.
So I really enjoy the shocking ones where I'm like, oh my gosh. Oh,
I like that too.
Yeah, because then there was another one where it was actually the end of the book, the last sentence of the book, in the Jill Kismet series, which I don't think you read. And it was the end of book 5, and that's the end that I was trying to get to. In the very last sentence, I was like, absolutely, this was fantastic. That was I'm very surprised that happened, but it was very good.
Neat.
Yeah. Oh, and then I have a sentence challenge.
Okay.
Which is, it doesn't have to end here.
Okay. All right. Yeah, Jen, send us another one. We're going to have a whole mini episode just on Jen stuff.
Absolutely.
That's really good too. I think a lot of people would learn a lot from it because I think it would be good for them to see what she does with these sentences.
I think it'd be great.
Because I think it's hard for people to
kind
say,
of
what do they
figure
mean?
out,
Yeah, what am I supposed to be doing? And Jen does a beautiful job. So,
I know. I need to go ahead and do some of them too, and then we can write up
definitely.
A mini. You know what I'm trying to say.
I know. Whether
know
our
what I'm trying to
listeners
say.
understand, I don't know. Well, thank you all for listening to us. Come check out our website. It is www.eatdrinkrightpodcast.com. We have our email is there. You can contact us through there. All our social media links are there. You can get to, our podcast episodes from there. I've got the YouTube link there that will take you to our channel. So come check us out. Let us know what other topics you want to talk about. Tell us jokes so that you all will have a break from the jokes I keep coming up with.
Obviously, they like them.
You keep saying that. I just don't know. But thank you to our patrons, Jen and Deanna. We really, really appreciate you.
We do.
And we will see you next week.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.